depicts what Tasmania has to offer, not just the good, but also some of the extreme conditions we work in. Next slide. To explain my journey and TOC's journey, I'll run through a brief history of how we began and where we began, how we got to where we are, and some of our plans for the future. Next slide. As you can see in the top left of the screen, that is the original hatchery that started back in 1979 in Bicheno. The reason we started the oyster hatchery was the wild catch in Tasmania was not sufficient enough for businesses to grow or to grow an industry around. So a group of farmers, including my father, got together and started the first commercial oyster hatchery in the Southern Hemisphere. You'll see some of the other pictures there. There's some pictures of oysters under the microscope as they are developing from seed. The next picture is some carboys where the food for those oysters is grown or started to grow. Once it reaches a certain density in production, they'll then go into the bags, which you'll see on the right. Now we've developed different bagging systems over the years. This is just some of the early stuff that we were using. Those bags will then get fed into the system, and you'll see the bottles on the bottom left is where they start their journey to produce the seed. You'll also notice that we have a nursery at Little Swamport. There we pump water straight from the estuary into upwellers to start the oysters off on the natural food in the waterways. And the bottom right is our current hatchery in Pipeclay Lagoon. Next slide, please. This is just some pictures of oyster farming over the years. You can see on the, we started with stick culture, as I'd mentioned before. We moved into seed trays, other large trays, bulk handling equipment. Some of our oyster baskets that we've got in our smithing operation. Now these baskets were developed by oyster farmers back in the early 80s. And I can still remember, stories from my father where the industry got together and everyone would show what new system that they had developed themselves to grow oysters in. I can still remember my mother sewing together what were known as 50% bags instead of the seed trays that you see. My father came home or went to work and he received a cup of oysters. That was his first shipment from shellfish culture, as it was back in the day. And he treated these as more precious than gold. They were his first babies. So yeah, that was interesting days. And we'd continue to develop our systems over the years to handle the volume of oysters that kept increasing, that came out of the hatchery. You'll also notice some technology for grading that we still use on the bottom left, just to get through the bulk of the numbers that we're looking at handling each year. And there's also a recent picture from our operation in Smith, and you'll see a number of boats and the racks. There's a 3.5 metre rise and fall in Smithton, so the guys have to be pretty quick at getting the oysters on and off the water. In southern Tasmania, we only get about half the rise and fall in tides, so this provides different challenges, but allows us more time on the water most days. Next slide, please. Just going to run through a brief history of how TOC began. So we began as shellfish culture, as I said, back in 1979 as the first commercial Pacific oyster hatchery. Next. All through shellfish culture's journey, we've had a strong focus on R&D. We regularly get experts in throughout the world, and we continue to work with our own researchers in Tasmania through CSIRO, IMAS and ASI. The game changer in Tasmania was the outbreak of POMS in 2016. Today I'll never forget, and at the time it was a massive shock to the system, and we wondered how we were going to get through. Not only from my own farming experience, but that of shellfish culture. So this led us to go on a vertically integrated approach from shellfish culture, and we decided to become a vertically integrated company. So shellfish culture at that time was producing seed and juvenile oysters, and we decided that the only way forward was to actually enter the mature market. Over the journey, shellfish culture and TOC have acquired another 7 oyster farms, including mine and my father's. We are now the largest vertically integrated oyster company in Australia. This has allowed us to develop our branding, which we see as vital to extract the most value for the hard work and effort we put into our farming. We continue to grow organically at this point in time. We've got a number of hectares that we can develop out of the water and assets that we've purchased, and we'll continue to look at opportunities as they arise. This will include the use of automation, robotics and mechanisation where we can. We feel SEAPA as a unit for growing oysters is ideally suited to utilise mechanisation and automations. Next slide, please. As I said, we operate as a vertically integrated oyster company, which means we produce our own seed, we grow it all the way out and sell it into wholesalers and retailers. We employ more than 130 team members across 2 states. We grow oysters and harvest them from 4 different growing regions in Tasmania, which means we can supply all year round. We export to 7 different countries currently and are always looking for other opportunities. Part of the strategy when POMS hit was to also open up a hatchery in South Australia. Our export of our seed was curtailed due to the biosecurity risk of exporting oysters into South Australia, and this is why we set up a hatchery there. You'll notice some of the branding that we've got behind me. We've commenced selling this product into retail. We do natural half shell oysters, and we also are aiming to, well, we have and we aim to increase our ready-to-eat oysters that can be from frozen to ready to eat in 15 minutes at home. We are certified organic and have Friends of the Sea accreditation. And we manage over 220 hectares of marine farm leases in Tasmania and South Australia. So learnings along the way. Oyster farming can be brutal. You can see some of the conditions that we grow in. This is predation by skates on the left is what the oysters should look like, and the other two slides are pictures of what can happen when skates get a hold of our oysters. Oyster farmers are resilient and resourceful. Oyster farmers have always found a way of overcoming the challenges, and this is no different today. So SEAPA was actually started through a combination of a plastic manufacturer and an oyster farmer in South Australia. We also continue to work with SEAPA, and I can remember would have been close to 10 years ago talking with SEAPA some of the challenges that we faced in our operation. Through conversations and development, we were able to come to the table with SEAPA and help develop what is now the Stormbreaker range of products, which is what we're rolling out across most of our sites. This not only helps with predation, but also helps keep our oyster farming gear on their lines growing beautiful oysters. We understand there is no perfect solution, and all our bays have different intricacies that make it challenging to grow oysters, and we continue to trial the best solutions that we can find. SEAPA is helping us with these, and we continue to look at what we can do with different water in our individual environments. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. You can see here on the left, our vision is to be a world-class shellfish company. We believe we're getting there, but we're not there yet. So our mission is to always improve what we do and how we do it. And we do this by empowering our employees to come up with different ideas and to help us achieve our goals. Our values underpin what we do as a company. So we're always striving to minimize our footprint and have a positive impact on the environment, as we understand as custodians of the land and sea, this will only help improve their product. We're always looking to imagine better, trying different things, as I mentioned, different products with SEAPA, better ways of handling our oysters so that we can create efficiencies and productivity. Lastly, I'd just like to thank SEAPA for the opportunity to present here today. I feel I'm very proud that they have selected me and TOC to be able to share our story and our journey with the rest